Hi, it's Mark Lyttle here. I'm the chairman of British Fencing, and I'm with Paul Klenerman, who competed in the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles in the men's sabre event, team event, I think it was, Paul. Look, maybe start by telling us a little bit about how you got into fencing.
Yeah, well, it was sort of nothing I'd really thought about really before I was sort of 13 or so. And then there was an opportunity to do it at school. Somebody came in and taught just sabre. I don't know why. It was Paul Ramang was very keen on, he was the coach at was Sal Ganchev, and it was just a very keen on sabre. And it sort of fitted in. I was busy playing other sports actually, and it, there wasn't any other sport competing for that slot. So I thought, well, I'll just give it a go. And I think it was one of those sports where if you showed any kind of interest and talent, then people really encouraged you. So yeah, it sort of took off a bit from there. But it was just that one opportunity that I thought I'll just give it a go.
And so your skills as a fencer obviously developed quite quickly, because you went to the Olympics at a relatively young age, I think, was it? Is that right?
Yeah, I was 21. So yeah, well, I think basically there was a very good junior system which I totally benefited from, and I know it still exists, but I mean, I think at that stage it was massive encouragement, and it was just through that. So basically, if I went to some under 20 training. I mean, I was based in London. It made it all a lot easier because it was very concentrated. And then I went to a few competitions and I don't think I won a single fight at any of them. So I got kind of excited and kind of demoralized at the same time. But then with the under 20s, I had a bit of a lucky break when I was about 15 and made the final of the UK under 20s. I think I just learned to stop cut or something that just clicked, and
yeah.
And then they took me to competitions abroad, and that whole thing just accelerated quite quickly. So you got lots of kind of positive encouragement. So I'd still go to the senior competitions and get hammered out in the first round, but you might make the final of the under 20. And then just as the late teens, I think they were very nice to me. I think then took me onto the senior team because I was starting to beat some of the people in the team, and so I went on some trips, and just that year, I think I'd just got enough points. I'd won the British Championships. I was sort of, quite competitive. So I think I just was lucky to hit it just at the right time. Up to that point, the previous Olympics, of course, that I had, it was a million miles away from that. So it was just those few years that I made quite good progress.
And you said you did other sports in school. Do you think that helped your fencing, or did it take it away from it, do you think?
No, I think it helped a lot. I mean, all sorts of reasons. I mean, partly just sort of general conditioning and training.
Yes.
I mean, I sort of stopped playing rugby when I got my front teeth punched out. But I did a lot of swimming, and I mean, I did a little bit of other martial arts, which I think, if you cross the martial arts, all these things about, very common aspects of awareness and timing and distance and, a bit of aggression. And then, of course, there's all the psychological bits about, preparing yourself, dealing with just the dismal kind of failure despite your best efforts. And so I think you're just a much better athlete all around if you've got a little bit more essentially vocabulary to deal with all those things.
So obviously going to Los Angeles must have been incredibly exciting. What was the, maybe we'll come on to the fencing in a second, but what was the highlight of going to Los Angeles from your point of view?
Well, I mean, I was just, completely thrilled to be on the team, to be honest. And as I described, just things fell into place at the right time for me. I was definitely the junior on the team. A lot of the other guys had been to, Moscow and other Olympics before that as well, and so I just being part of the team was just incredible. I think turning up and I mean, actually, it's I didn't really, I think, realize what I was letting myself in for till the kind of opening ceremony, I think. And
Yeah.
that because you see, then I think it was also, I knew all the fences. We'd been to world championships, and so that bit felt kind of normal at that point.
Yes.
Just another bunch of really good fences. But then when you start to come across people that you only ever saw on TV, the sort of Daley Thompsons and Seb Coes and that sort of thing, that's when it really kind of hit home. And I think it was a very popular Olympics. I think there was lots of crowds. So just people wanting your autograph, wanting to swap things and being part of with the public. And then the other athletes from other countries, it was just super engaging. So you just got carried along with the cold excitement of it.
I guess Daley Thompson and Seb Coe both winning the gold medals were particular. I think we all, of our generation, kind of remember those as highlights, especially Daley Thompson. I have to say, they called him the greatest athlete of all time, I think, or of at that time anyway. So I think the opening ceremony must have been thrilling.
Yeah, no, that was amazing, and I remember it was slightly chaotic. The opening ceremony was actually probably better for the people watching on TV because we were queuing outside most of the time. But it was a bit chaotic. Trying to, I think some of the other teams that maybe the rowers, you could imagine, are like very organized into their groups. So the fencers were, as you probably could imagine, a little bit of a shambles, getting themselves lined up. But it was really good fun to be part of that. The closing ceremony, I would say, because we were much more relaxed after competing, and the whole thing was really good fun. So those kind of stick in my mind a little bit as a sort of highlights, I think.
And what about the fencing itself in Los Angeles?
That now it feels like a bit of a blur. I actually badly twisted my ankle in the training, and I thought, oh God, I come all this way, and I'm just gonna be sitting on the sidelines. But fortunately, it healed up enough for me to take part. And I mean, in the team event, it goes quite quick, and it was there was an audience, but it's not. I mean, I went to 2012 to watch, and of course that was just brilliantly done, and with the commentating and a really clear audience. It didn't feel that the competing. It felt more like a kind of regular competition, and like a regular international one. Yeah. So it blurs in a little bit with all the other myriad of the same people that I was fencing around the place, and but it was super exciting to be on there representing your country and on a stage like that. It was just amazing.
So what would you say your strengths as a sabre were?
Probably better to ask some of my teammates, but I suspect I think I was kind of fast and a little bit, because that age, not very I was pretty fearless. I didn't think anybody was going to ever hit me, so I just ran at people a lot. And in those days, you could literally run. Then they stopped you, and you had to use actually proper footwork and lunge and flash things. But I mean, I just had this style of being able to take off quite quickly, and then if you can do that and you can change direction, you can catch a lot of people out. Yes. And I had a fantastic coach, Tamas Medlany, who I think he just trained me. I probably saw what my strengths were and just trained me to do like really simple things really well. So I could basically hit somebody on the head, and I could parry, probably 2 parries basically I could manage. But if you do that with enough distance and timing and instinct, then you can go quite a long way. And when you watch some of the really good guys, Lemore, for example, in France, he had many more. He won the gold in LA. He could do a lot more things, but in fact, the hits he won on, it was always just a really simple thing, just done beautifully. And so, that's always been how I feel that you should be able to fence. Not too complicated, but just really well timed.
Well, it's the sabre record we had, of course, in the decade or two before that was absolutely amazing. So we have some young up and coming sabres now. So maybe they've something to try and emanate for the future. So Paul, did you continue to fence after Los Angeles, or did career take over at that point?
Yeah, I did go to another student games, and I thought I might try and get to Seoul, and I think it just all became a bit too much. I can't really recall my actual decision making, if I ever really did, but I think that with the clinical training and the rotas and things like that, I just didn't feel very kind of, it was just really hard to engage properly with it when I wasn't in London at that point. So, and a lot of the training was still there. So I think I lost a lot of momentum, which I'd otherwise built up, and a bit of confidence, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, and then, so I think then I kind of, I carried on training a bit. I mean, I still did it at university. I was still there doing my clinical training for a bit, and you know, simple stuff that wasn't going to necessarily mean I had to train maximally. And then I went abroad. I was in Switzerland. I did a little bit. I did, you know, on and off competitions.
Yeah.
But then I think it's a little bit harder when you're used to kind of really training every day and being
Yes.
kind of completely at the peak, and then it didn't feel quite good. So it's taken me like 30 years or so to kind of recover from that. I don't mind losing to people now if I go to the club. It doesn't feel quite so bad.
And tell us a little bit about your career then. Since then, you were doing medicine in university, were you?
Yeah, I did medicine, and then I specialized in kind of hospital medicine and then infectious diseases. And then I sort of took a more academic track to I mean, I still see patients, but I spend most of my time doing research. And quite early on, I got interested in infection and viruses. It was the early 90s. It was all, you know, HIV was like the big thing. We didn't have any drugs. So I got involved in projects to try and understand how the immune system did or didn't control it, and then got into sort of vaccines. And I've worked a lot on hepatitis C. And now, of course, you know, those viruses, vaccines, immunity, it's all COVID now, of course. So that's been the kind of story for the last year or two.
Have you been working in that area, or have you or your team been involved in anything on that side of things?
Yeah, so COVID, we've done a fair bit. So because I coordinate quite a lot of the immunology research in Oxford, so I kind of got fingers in lots of pies around. And obviously Oxford's done a lot in this area, particularly with the vaccine. So I mean, my group work on those chimpanzee adeno vaccines, and we did stuff, you know, 10 years ago with some of the early versions, which are fantastically immunogenic. We did trials, for example, for Hep C, that completely brilliant as a vaccine in one sense. It didn't work at all for Hep C. Hep C is a complicated virus. So some of those things are still running on some of the tests and some of the assays that we developed, and we've helped Sarah Gilbert and the team that by providing samples from patients and providing you know, other sorts of samples so that we can assay how well the vaccine's going. And then we've done quite a lot of projects. I mean, one of the questions that is, you know, why do some people get sick and others don't? Yes. With the same virus? So we're trying to figure that one out. That's much harder. So yeah, lots of stuff to do around that. It's all very exciting, and hopefully we've made I mean, I think, you know, we've made quite a good contribution overall. We still got a long way to go there.
Yeah, it's obviously been a tough time for a lot of people, but from a research point of view, I guess a very stimulating time to be involved, and seeing the progress that with the vaccine, I guess that's the thing that surprised many of us.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, because that project I just described, the hepatitis C one, I mean, it took to get from the very beginning to the end of that, and as I said, it's not a vaccine that anybody can use because it doesn't work well enough. That took about 10 years. I mean, it was really a long process, whereas, you know, the same thing just happened in front of your eyes. So it's just brilliant. I'm so amazed, really.
So how do you think the pandemic is going to play its way out now?
Oh, well, I wish I knew. Everybody, well, everybody thinks they know, but I mean, if there's one thing you've learned from this is that nothing is predictable. But I think when you look at the vaccine's ability to kind of protect against the variants that have emerged so far, it's not too bad. You know, there's some gaps, but there's not a kind of massive hole. So, you know, if in real life that's good enough against the variants that are currently circulating, hopefully we'll get some level of control. Maybe not immediately, because things are just as it stand in June 2021, it's not very kind of brilliantly controlled at the minute, but hopefully we can get, you know, control such that and the people's lives can go back to normal, the hospitals are able to function, you know, people aren't at threat. But eliminating the virus is just going to, I think at this point where it's got into every corner of the globe, it's just, you know, going to be too difficult. So it will remain as a kind of threat, but hopefully not as a kind of major one. But it seems it's going to take a lot longer than everybody kind of initially hoped for. It could be, quite some time.
That's fascinating. So I guess one of the questions people often ask is, you've been an elite athlete. Do you think that your training and your work as an elite athlete has helped your career in any way? So, for instance, we're building up resilience to deal with the ups and downs of life. You have to deal with that in competition, or just the hard work, or
I mean, when people ask me this generally, the thing that strikes me most is just being able to cope with all the failure. And so, I mean, the career I've chosen in science, it's a lot like that. As I just described, our pet project for Hep C vaccine didn't work, but you have to pick yourself up and try again, essentially. And there's a lot of that. And of course, with the it's great to win things or get further in the competition than you expected, little wins along the way. But a lot of the time, you're going to come back and having trained your absolute best and prepared yourself as well as you can, and then somebody's just going to kind of knock you out just when you really didn't want to leave. You didn't want to go home, and so I do think that dealing with that is it's a very hard lesson to learn. I think it took me a long time. I used to come back from the competitions just incapable of talking to anybody, and I think I probably was awful, but I think over time you kind of absorb that stuff, and those lessons have been, I think, are very, very important. That seems like a very negative view, but actually I don't think it is. I think it's about learning to become a better person, and the training, you spend so much more time training than competing. You have to love the training, you have to love the process, and not just rely on winning things to get your self-validation. So I think that is an important lesson for life. I hope I've learned it.
Well, what about reapplying it? Maybe as a vets fencer, there's a very active circuit. I don't know if you're advised. I take it from what you said.
No, I thought about it a lot. But as I said, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that I'm not going to beat everybody. So I have been down to the club and the local club and done a bit, and I actually really enjoy it. My main problem is if I do try and fence the way I used to fence, I keep injuring myself, which is a bit tragic, but I can't. I've sort of pulled the various bits of my calves and Achilles and things like that, so I just have to watch it a bit. So I think I would like to do it. I'll just have to find a style that's just more sustainable, essentially, but I'm looking forward to it. So watch out, actually.
That's great. So hopefully Tokyo is going to go ahead now. That's the thing we're all hoping, I guess, at least for the athletes' sake. And Marcus Memstead, as you know, is our only fencer going this time. So I think it's been probably quite difficult dealing with the preparation and, of course, the postponement of the games.
I think it must be a very big challenge, but he looks to me, I mean, I don't know him personally, but I mean, just looking what he's done, fantastic athlete. What he's got, and he's also got the confidence. He knows he can, make the finals. He's got all sorts of medals. So that really makes a difference, and I really wish him all the best. It's hard to be the sole representative. Nice to have the team around you, but we're all cheering you on, Marcus. So go for it.
Yeah, that's great. We certainly are, and well, I guess he'll be the center of attention from an athlete point of view. The team have him to support, and that's it. So. Yes, good luck to him. And Paul, thank you very much for taking the time. That's been a very interesting insight. And thank you very much.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. Yeah, thank you.